it? What day was it? Just a few days ago. This week feels mushy and just merged together in my mind because it's been so tough. But what day was it that I was sitting on the couch and I'm like arguing with Boaz about like, what is he saying to me? And I'm like trying to get clarification of what, and I'm like trying to tell him to put down what was in his hand. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is it? What is it? And then finally it was revealed what it was. It was poop. He was holding he was holding poop. And so what did I say? What did I look at him and say?
Yeah, I think you just started screaming, poop, poop.
I was like, you have poop in your hand? Yes. It was like, why? Why does any other 2-year-old, except for our 2-year-old, come with their poop in their hands as if it's an art treasure or a rock?
I feel like there probably are.
I'm sure.
Because I don't think he's the first 2-year-old we've had that has done that.
It's almost too painful to remember the other times.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe we're wrong.
Maybe. Oh, and by the way, welcome to Celebrate Story. If you've noticed, we're doing something a little bit differently today, where I'm on the microphone with Julie, and it's just kind of, we decided to just have a conversation with you guys today. So.
Welcome
To celebrate
to Celebrate
Story.
Welcome to Celebrate Story.
Meanderings in Motherhood.
Motherhood.
With my mom.
My mom.
With my mom. With my mom.
With my wife.
Joy Randall.
Julie Wagner. Julie Wagner. Julie Wagner.
Okay, we got to start with your story about the combine.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know how old I was. It was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, preteen. And I remember it was around football and around the NFL combine was going on. And something about it interested me. And I went to my dad and I was like, told him the story. And I was like, yeah, it happened at the concubine. And he stopped and he looked at me and he was like, I don't think you're saying that right. And I was like, no, it's the concubine. I heard it. I story. And he's like, no, I don't think that's what you think it is. And no, I was very, very sure that concubine was the word I was going for there, which I don't think he ever corrected me. I just kind of found out on my own later that, I was wrong. It was concubine is something completely different than the NFL combine.
But you were certain.
I was certain.
You were
and then I
absolutely
found
certain.
out that I was wrong.
That's yeah, okay.
And this is the first time I'm admitting publicly that I was wrong.
And now I haven't recorded forever. Okay, that requires the Indians Are Coming story. So the house that I grew up in, it was on the water, and across the water was a high school. I guess it was Tab High School, I think it's Grafton High School now, but it was Tab High School then. And the marching band would practice. Well, my sister and I were out playing outside, and when we heard the drums, we had just heard a very scary story. And when we heard the drums, somehow very quickly we believed that this was danger for us. Like we were going to get hurt. And I don't remember the events that led to it, but I do know that in a very quick period of time, my sister and I were crying in her closet, and my brother and I think some of his friends were pounding on the door, screaming, "The Indians are coming! The Indians are coming!" And her and I are panicked in the closet. And we eventually came out of the closet and were safe because for whatever reason we feared this, this trumped up thing that my brother had created as a prank. And it wasn't till years later that I was at my parents' house and heard the marching band practicing. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it's not that I spent like every day of my life scared of this whole thing, but it's like just this moment of clarity of like, I was so sure there was something to be scared of. I mean, and we could also just unpack, like, how cruel is that prank? A prank is never funny if people are scared.
So your brother never told you that there weren't Indians across the river?
If he did, I don't remember it. And I mean, it really is funny to me now, but I can remember this vivid feeling of fear. And I remember them banging on the doors, like let us in, like, don't just leave us out. But it's like, it's both funny and it's also like, it's fascinating how certain we can be of something that isn't even true.
Probably doesn't help that you grew up near Yorktown and Jamestown, and there's probably there were Indians across that river at some point. So
yes, and yes, I mean, I'm sure, and that says a lot about, like, my fear of difference at that age, right? Like what did I think was going to happen? Yeah, we were always going to the Yorktown battlefields and Jamestown and learning about the hardships of early American life.
Yeah.
According to, one section of history. I mean, that could just take a whole other rabbit trail right there. But
yeah. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
Yes, because I'm definitely not certain about any of that. So,
which is good, because that's what we're talking about today, is not being certain.
Yes. This feels like a theme with so many friendships and conversations I'm having with close ones, and Steve and I are having. My sister actually brought the book, The Sin of Certainty, for me this summer by Peter Enns. He actually came to speak recently, didn't he?
Yeah, here in Charlotte.
Yeah, Watershed. So this is just rocking my world personally of, things that I used to be so certain of. And I was thinking about, like, what leads someone to go from certainty to uncertainty. And I don't know the answer, but I know for me, darkness does that. Suffering and darkness is like the quickest way to strip me of my ego defenses that I think I know and I think I'm certain. What do you think takes you out of your certainty, Steve?
I think with certainty with me, I'm a fairly logical person. I consider myself a logical person. So I like I like certainty. And I think as I get older, maybe a frustrating thing about liking certainty so much is I'm realizing that there's not a lot to be certain of. There's so much information at hand that I find it harder and harder to be certain. But at the same time, since I am so logical, I feel like I'm always searching for certainty. There's a line I don't know if any of that made sense, but there's a line in a song that has just stuck with me for years and years. It's a song by Michael Franti, and the line in the song is, the more I see, the less I know. So I think that, like my story before, I was so sure about the word I was using to my dad, and I was obviously wrong. And then, as you get older, we'll have to tell the Fuddruckers story. But, before you're a parent, you're certain you're going to be a great parent. You know exactly what you're how to parent. When you're, starting a business like we did, I'm going to do this business better than all the other people that have done this business. And I'm going to, I don't know. There's a cockiness in the, youth. I want to say immaturity, but it's really naivete, or, you don't know what you don't know. Ugh. So the more you see, the more you experience, the less you find out that you actually do know.
It's so true. It's so true. And it seems like that's why it hurts it seems like I'm starving to be in more relationships with people that are less certain, because it seems like intimacy doesn't have a chance if one party is certain and put the other person in boxes. There's no chance of connection if someone's holding on to their certainty and their beliefs about another person, because empathy takes sitting in mystery. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying it feels more comfortable to be ligamented to ideas and ideologies and systems that are like, this is the right way. It's harder to sit and wrestle with I don't know. It's harder to sit in that space of I don't know.
Especially when you have, as we have, 8 people that we are in care of asking you questions, and they are searching for certainty. So to be able to look at them and say, I don't know, it's humbling. It can be a little scary because if you don't know the answer, you don't always know where they're going to go to find the answer. But more and more, I think that us saying we're not certain helps them in their uncertainty. That them seeing us struggling with something, whether it's finances or faith or marriage, or that we don't seem like we have it all figured out, it creates less shame in them.
Oh, preach.
When they don't have it all figured out, when they're struggling with whatever it is that you struggle with as you get older.
That was so good that you connected that out loud. I love that, because I think my struggle with shame is like consuming ravenously in my 30s the how to be perfect methods, the how to be perfect with family, how to be perfect with finances, how to be all the things. And it does.
The 3 easy steps to get out of debt. The
yes.
7 steps to a perfect marriage.
Yes. How to be one of my favorite books about motherhood is the No More Perfect Moms, because I think we're all just drowning in this perfection infection. And I love that you said in the beginning about information is like, as information is seemingly infinite, it gives us this false sense of security in picking the right information. I don't know, but we have to tell the Fuddruckers story. So who's starting it?
I'll start it.
Okay.
Before Julie and I had any kids.
0.
So we were 22-ish.
Babies.
We were living in an apartment or a condo every Friday night. Basically what we did was go out to eat, go to the movies, meet friends for drinks, and we really didn't have anything else to do.
Yes. We just had time, lots of time.
So one of these nights we were at Fuddruckers, and if anybody's been to Fuddruckers, it's basically order at the counter. They call your name, you go and pick up your food. So we're sitting there, and of course it's easy for us. We have our stuff, but there was this family that was sitting towards the back of Fuddruckers, and there was 7 of them?
A lot. There was a lot of children.
And one, we thought it was great. They all ordered like soup.
At Fuddruckers, where they have the best burgers in the world.
But, and just, so that was our first comment. But then it just became this thing. We're sitting there and we noticed that the dad walked past us and went up to the counter to get something, and then the mom, and then a couple of the kids.
And they were frazzled. They were totally frazzled.
And it just became a cavalcade of this family just walking with some purpose past our table, back and forth, like grabbing a spoon, grabbing a fork, grabbing napkins, grabbing ketchup, grabbing just back and forth. And they had to go past us a dozen times.
So
plus.
many times.
So we're just, each time they pass us, we're just sitting there like laughing. We're getting more laughing at the ridiculousness of it. We're like, what is happening that these people can't get it straight? And why did they sit so far back? And why did they order soup? And
do you think the soup was on special?
Maybe
we know
was.
that now. Like, if there's a
we understand what it takes to,
we now know.
Fuddruckers cost our family $150 to go out to eat. We understand the budget of what they were doing.
And if soup was buy one get one free,
Maybe.
They probably were like, get us some.
But we're sitting there, no kids. Our biggest worry of the night is there a new movie out? Because we've seen all the movies in the movie theater. Those are our biggest concerns at that point. And we're looking at these people and we're like, we didn't say it out loud, but we're like, we do this better.
Oh yeah,
like,
we never said it.
We can keep these kids organized. We can have one trip. We're going to be one trip. So,
Fast forward how many years? And we have 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. And we're... Wait, no, hold on. You're going too far, too fast.
Sorry.
We got to go back to, is it okay if I...
Go for it.
Okay. The moment that we first remembered the Fuddruckers story and how ignorantly certain we were was in the hospital with the twins when the twins were born. And we were literally like the two bassinets, and both Zoe and Zane, when they were born, both were 35 and a half weeks. They were jaundiced. So they're like in the full light up beds.
Billy beds.
Billy beds. That's what they were called.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remember the name of them. And we're just literally like bumping into each other, trying to get the diapers, trying to get the wipes, trying to write down how long each of them fed on, each side. You have to track all the nursing.
When did they pee? When did they poop?
Yes. And it's with two of them. And it's like, we're like literally bumping into each other, and it's just so inefficient and so confusing. And that was the moment that Steve looked up at me in my eyes when we're bumping into each other, all bumbling around, like just crazy, like chickens with our head cut off. And you looked at me and you said,
Fuddruckers.
And we have to, I'm so glad we're telling this story for the podcast, because I don't think we've revisited this story since the class at church. We did the parenting class at church that they did for a short time, and we shared it then. But I just love remembering how funny it is when you reflect on how certain you were.
Yeah, we were certain we could handle it better, and we have had numerous instances as we've had kids, more and more kids, where things will be crazy and we'll be running around restaurants and, all that kind of stuff. And we've literally just stopped, looked at each other at the same time sometimes. And it just, that word, we just say Fuddruckers. And it just takes us instantly back to how certainly uncertain we were.
Yes.
Back then.
And it's such an example of, you have no clue what someone's inner world is like and what their experience is like until you have like literally lived that life. Like the outside perspective is one piece, and it's, I have children and teens in all the stages, and it's like I can relate to any mom, and I'm like a connection addict. I love connecting and I love talking, and I always think it's interesting how like mom conversations collect together, and sometimes there's like a competition for the best answer for whatever the issue is. And I always just have to take a deep breath, because it's like there are no certain formulas. There are no easy answers. And really, I think the best gift we can give to others is just like sitting in the mystery of the difficulty, sitting in the mystery of not knowing, not fixing, not numbing, and just, I don't know. But I sure hope you find your answer. But I'm riffing a bit. So
yeah. So I guess a question would be then, why are we talking about this? I don't know if we've addressed that yet.
Oh yes, we didn't get to where our point was.
It really came down. We've been working on some content for the podcast. Julie's been talking about a book and an author and a concept that she really likes, and struggling a little bit on releasing that information, that it might come out too lecture-y, or kind of like, hey, here's this concept and it's great and it's awesome and you all should do it.
Yes.
And saying, and also there was some worry of like, and I've got it all, because I've got it all figured out and I love this concept and this is what you need to do. And that's not
my heart. I'm the first to jump. I hope that I live a life that I'm the first to jump fences. I mean, I was full side on one side of the debate this summer, and I literally, after some suffering in the hospital, went to the exact other side. Like, I hope that I'll be the first to jump sides. If I've picked a side, I'm just playing with that side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I think that's where we got the maybe I'm wrong, because I think that's kind of the heart behind really anything we're gonna talk about on the podcast. Is, this is great and it's very interesting and I think it's helpful and I think it could help your life or our lives, or
it certainly helps my life to say it.
Right. It's valuable. We think this is valuable information, but you know what? In the end, it might be wrong. And if it's wrong, then we're going to be open to change our minds.
changing sides, yeah.
And so we're, on one side, we're saying, take that in mind whenever you're hearing anything on this podcast. And two, we're reserving the right
to change our minds.
by saying this to change our minds.
Yes. Because there's nothing so humbling about one of the next podcasts, if all goes well. Who knows? Sometimes for a week to pass, and sometimes 9 months can pass by.
Yeah.
So fast. Because life just moves so fast. And then if like 2 of the plates that Steve and I are spinning fall, it might take us 3 weeks to get all the plates in all the right places to keep the bus moving down the road again. And also it just has to drive over us a couple of times too. But the next podcast we release, if all goes well, will be on just this idea, like a question. I hosted a dinner party recently at my house for the moms in my neighborhood. And I've just loved getting the chance to connect with them. And one of the questions in this question game we played was, what would you talk about for hours if you could? And I knew the answer, and it actually caused me pain, because what I would love to talk about is embracing the unpleasant emotions and like what that can do to connect us to each other and connect us to ourselves. It's like I literally could talk nonstop, but yet I was also wrestling with how badly I feel I do at that. Like I'm preschool level, but I have this hope and this like excitement that, because I've seen it, just the little bit that I can do it, like the little bit that I can like really get quiet and listen and not dismiss my jealousy, not be afraid of the jealousy, but like follow it to its root. It then bursts a podcast. Or if I can really look face to face at sort of my despondency without shaming it away, like without shaming myself for feeling that way and trying to move out of it. But if I can really sit in it, if I can like just be courageous enough to sit in it, it's like the softness and the compassion and the easiness and the joy flows at the end of just actually facing that. So anyways, I can already tell I'm starting to talk about that next podcast. But what I'm saying is that it's like there was a terror in me of like, I cannot possibly talk about embracing and naming, these unpleasant emotions in our lives and how important it is when I suck so bad at it. And so my husband's here laughing. Are you laughing because I suck so bad at it?
No.
Okay, you must tell me why you're laughing.
I'm just laughing because of how passionately you talked about sucking at it. I don't know. It was humorous to me. It caught me a little off guard.
You've known me a long time. Do I do anything not passionately?
Nope, nothing at all.
Okay. I just had to know why you're laughing. Okay, so my whole point, before I got interrupted with laughter, which I loved, I'll take that, and I need all the laughter. I need more laughter. But I needed to put that on the table before I talked about it, because it's like, that was what was gnawing at my core.
And we'll be right back.
Noonday Collection is who I've partnered with to sponsor the podcast for today. And Noonday Collection creates meaningful opportunities for people around the world. Their mission is to build flourishing communities where children are cherished, women are empowered, and people have dignified jobs. They're a part of the fair trade movement, and you can shop the link in our show notes today for unique jewelry, handbags, ornaments, wreaths, made by artisans around the world. I want to share one such story from one of the artisans that creates one of the necklaces in the Storyline collection. So the name Storyline Collection is deep-rooted and meaningful because of the stories that each piece of jewelry represents. The artisan business that Noonday Collection partners with to create our Storyline Collection helps women in East Asia find freedom from exploitation. Your Storyline purchases help the artisan business provide counseling and rehabilitation services and dignified jobs that empower these women to support themselves and their family. Each piece of jewelry represents the story of a woman who has experienced difficult circumstances but has found hope and taken the chance to start a new life. As a young woman, Winnie was trafficked into a brothel in East Asia where she lived for years. When she met the outreach team from Noonday's artisan business partner, her eyes were opened to the danger of her current life. But for the first time in a long time, she has also found hope. The transition from Winnie's prior situation to working with our artisan business partner was not all smooth sailing. At first, Winnie hardly spoke to others. She struggled to make jewelry and felt purposeless. But through the team's holistic approach and one-on-one mentoring, Winnie was provided with tools to reflect on her life, learn how to communicate, and learn new skills. In the last year, Winnie says she has changed a lot. She can express herself, quickly produce jewelry, and has learned valuable business skills. Winnie shared, since coming to the workshop, I have gotten married and now have a baby too. Today, I am so happy and feel that I have an extremely rich life. Noonday Collection creates a global marketplace. So, shop today on the Noonday Collection link to support this podcast and support women like Winnie around the world and be a part of the fair trade movement.
Now back to Celebrate Story.
And I have a quote I want to read that is so important on this episode. The telling of stories is the abiding act by which people of all times and places pass down to the coming generations their hard-won fragments of wisdom. One can call it culture or one can call it fun, but it will always remain indispensable. Wisdom is often purchased at great price, and much of it fades into disremembering because of silence or modest restraint, or because of shame and grief. Yet without the telling, we would soon cease to understand who we are.
Can I tell you where that strikes a chord with me?
Please.
Now, part of all this certainty talk, we won't get into it too much here, but I've been going through a bit of it's a buzzword kind of right now, but a deconstruction of my Christian faith. Still a Christian, still believe in the core tenets of it, but just kind of questioning the role of the church and how, is the church that we know doing it right? The telling of stories is such an interesting thing because we have different types of churches in this country, and it seems to be the wave in the last 20, 25, 30 years has been a more modern, a church that's it's geared towards younger people, geared towards 20, 30, 40-year-olds and their kids. And I was just thinking the other day as we kind of jostle on what we're doing for church, when I think of the more liturgical churches, the more kind of like the one I grew up in that was, it was different generations at that point. At this point, it's mainly older generations, but it's more traditional, not as flashy, but it has, some character to it. And the story part of that is, have we done something to the church that, since we call that the traditional Catholic, traditional Lutheran, traditional Methodist, traditional churches like that, have gotten the label of boring. That it's just they're not culturally relevant anymore. So you get your bigger mega churches and things like that are playing rock music and just flashy and videos and
smoke machine.
Yeah, smoke machines and 3D services and stuff like that. That you've attracted a whole generation of people that are now moving away from those traditional liturgical services. So when you look around at church, you're seeing a lot of people that are 20, 30, 40 years old.
Just a few generations.
But you're not seeing 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds because they're at a different church. And that church is dying. Unfortunately, literally, those smaller, older churches are dying off because they're not getting new members. But then it makes me question, because these big churches have been around now for the flashy megachurch type things have been around now for 25, 30, 35 years. Where are the older people? I'm feeling like you're losing something by not having all the generations there. You're not getting the stories and the wisdom, and we end up just, and Julie and I have done this through our marriage, you're making it up as you go along.
Oh yeah.
Rather than really valuing the
older voices.
Yeah, the traditions and the stories, because we're not doing anything for the first time. Nothing we do is new. We may have some new things, like technology wasn't what it was 40 years ago, but we're not doing new stuff. Everybody's been doing parenting and working and generations and generations for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But it's a huge tangent I just went off on, but I think that
but a needed one.
The stories, the wisdom, and I think is lacking. It's missing.
It is. It's a friend of mine that actually used to work at the church too. She's so excited. She had found a multi-generational church and is just raved about what that means to her. And it's definitely something I like hearing you talk about that, because it's something I'm starving for. And I don't think I realized how segmented we were at our church in this just few generations until we started getting to the top end of that. Yeah. It's like, wow, okay, where are the other 40 somethings at this place?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think where that goes with certainty is 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah, this is the way to do it. Like, I would have said the Lutheran church and the Catholic church that I went to when I was a kid, and I hated sitting through the services, and that was not the way to go. That the church we're in now is the way to go. It's, engaging families, and it's doing this, but as you just start to realize some things are missing,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to decide whether those things are important. So 10 years ago, I was certain we were doing church right, Christianity right. And now I'm not so certain. And I was able to say, well, you know what? I might be wrong on this. And
Yes.
and I think another part of that is I have a group of guys that aren't afraid of talking about that stuff. And I think that's harder and harder and harder to find. I mean, we've
Yes.
seen with the political talk, the pandemic talk, that there seems to be very little room for nuance.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of space in the middle. You're either for it or against it, or with them or against them, or.
And why can't we be both? I mean, like, I am both pro-life and pro-choice, and I will sit eye to eye, heart to heart with anyone and share that. But it's like, how can we not be both? Like, because if I'm taking over, is this okay?
It's your podcast.
Oh,
I
that's
felt
right.
like I was taking over your podcast.
Well, I just feel so passionate about that, because it's like, it breaks my heart to hear certain answers on one side that are devoid of empathy and that distance us further from the other side, when we're all human, and it's like, we can't have a stance on one side that dehumanizes the other side. And we can't have a stance that is so certain of our side that it doesn't make any room for empathy for this other person's desperate situation or heartbreaking reality. So I'm both. I just had to throw that in. I think the very first podcast, somehow I threw that in. Then I was like, oh no, we'll get to that later. So we'll see if that makes the cut. But something else you were saying, Steve, made me want to quote the Mother Teresa quote. Mother Teresa says, I have never had clarity. What I have always had is trust. So I will pray that you trust God. And I think, in summary for me, what I would want to say is, when we make room for ambiguity and make room for gray areas and make room for the space in between, we make space for connection. Because we cannot encourage, we cannot support, we cannot push up, we cannot lift up someone we've already put in a box because they haven't checked all the right sizes as us, and we're certain we've checked the right boxes. the other day, back before Steve and I both had our injury, Steve and I both recently had an injury. His was worse. He fell off of a speed bump and
I
broke his
didn't
ankle.
fall. I just.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
I stepped on the wrong side of a speed bump.
Yes.
Speed hump.
And broke his ankle. So
Does
that
anybody know the difference between a speed bump and a speed hump?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But he had that injury, and I had a little bit of a hip issue, and so it has been rough times around here as we have been hobbling along and lost that regular rhythm of exercise. So, just hold space for the hardness over here, y'all. But anyways, back on what was I saying? When we were running, because we were supposed to be doing a half marathon. Is it this Saturday?
Tomorrow.
Okay. I'm very sad about that. But you know what? There will be another half marathon. But when we were doing some training several weeks ago, I was so moved. We were going downhill, so we had it easy and could feel like we were like the master runners of all. That's how I always feel. When I'm going down a hill, I'm like, oh, I am a champion. This is so amazing. And so we were going downhill, so, at our peak speed, and some neighbors were going uphill. It was a father and a son on their bike, and it was one of the bigger hills in our neighborhood, and we have some very big hills in our neighborhood. And he drove up his bike. He saw that his son was starting to struggle, and he got behind him, and he took his hand and pushed him on his bike, like pushed from the base of his back so he could keep pedaling and keep going. And he did this multiple times, and I literally just almost burst out into tears running because it was so moving to me, this just like support in the going up. And to me, when we are so certain of another person, of what they need and how they're wrong and how we're right, that's an impossible place to be. We can't even get that close to support and encourage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you can assume that father has a good idea of what his son needs. And in that moment, he wanted him to, one, not have to stop and walk and go up the hill, and maybe there might be some defeated. He could basically make it up the hill. He just needed a little nudge. I think that we all get discouraged or get tired or get just not able to sometimes put one foot in front of the other, and just sometimes that somebody seeing you and what you need and giving you a nudge in the right direction is just a really valuable. And if you're not in tune with that person, if he's looking at his son and was like, you're X years old and you should be able to make it up this hill all on your own, because when I was that age, I was able to make it up that hill on his own. There's something missed there. Now we're making all this up.
It's extrapolating the point, because to me it connected back to what you're saying about these multi-generational spaces of community. Like, we need the people that know what it takes to get up the hills of life.
Yeah.
To give us those pushes.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, thank you to so many of you that have been so generous with your encouragement and your words and your sharing of the podcast. It has been overwhelming in the best way. I think the primary reason, and I'll get into that in later podcasts, that I had this podcast was a place to play and share my stories, because it met a need in me to do it. And it is beyond delightful to have the encouragement from so many of you to just tell me to keep going. So thank you so much.